Welcome to Nonprofit Nation, the series that highlights the meaningful work nonprofits are doing to strengthen our community. In each episode, we speak with leaders, volunteers, and advocates addressing real-world changes and creating impactful solutions. Join us as we explore their stories, the obstacles they face, and the measurable change they bring to people and causes they serve. Right, and welcome back, folks, to Nonprofit Nation. I am your host, Amanda Pirch, and I am joined today by the president and CEO of The Place here in Cumming, Cristy Ferencie.
Thank you for having me, Amanda.
And I'd love to catch our listeners up about the great work you've been doing in our community. But first, let's set the stage. And why don't you share the mission with our listeners?
The mission of The Place is to meet the needs, essential needs of the residents of Forsyth and Dawson County, but also to make them self-sustaining. So we have a dual mission. The great thing is we're there for your basics, for everything, Maslow's hierarchy, food, shelter, clothing, and we will always be there for that. But we also believe we have a responsibility to help people that are able to move beyond that. So beyond that means you came to us, you've lost your job, you need some financial assistance to help pay your next month's rent because you just don't have enough. But when you come to us, we tell you, oh, did you know we also have a food pantry? Let us help you meet some of those needs so you can save some money, not spend it at the grocery store. But at the same time, let me connect you to our workforce development manager, see if she can help you find a job. And in that discussion and research and meeting, the workforce manager discovers that they never graduated high school, right? So their job and earning potential is limited. But we offer GED classes. And so let's get you enrolled in our GED class so that you can increase your earning potential. Or you struggle with the English language. Let's put you in our English ESL classes so that you can get a better paying job. And all of those are steps to wrap around you so that maybe down the road, you don't need us. You don't need that food pantry, or we're here if you fall on hard times again. But our ultimate goal is, wherever possible, is to work ourselves out of a job with you.
I like that, work ourselves out of a job. You mentioned a variety of resources that you guys provide or programming. And within that, do you guys offer housing?
We don't offer housing. Unfortunately, that's one of the biggest challenges in Forsyth and Dawson, that we are facing the affordability of housing. So there are actually ordinances and not support for some workforce housing and other efforts in our area. So all we can do is help support. If someone is able to save enough for the security deposit to get into an apartment, say, then we can help you with that first month's rent.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. I love seeing how active you are on social media to share with the community the resources and the programs that you have, and also donation sites for things like the goods that you supply in the pantry. For those listening who might like to utilize the pantry as a resource, or for those who might like to contribute, can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Most of our programs, we do have a qualification process. However, let me say, if you walk in my doors and you need food, we will give you food. We will never turn away someone who is hungry. But if you would like to receive ongoing support from us and shop our weekly food pantry, then we do have a qualification process, and that involves providing a picture ID from somewhere, anywhere, we don't care where, income, proof of income, and proof of residency in our county. And then that enables you to, we have an online Instacart type system that for our food pantry, that's our inventory, and you can go select and shop for the foods that you and your family like and schedule a pickup time from one of our locations. So
that's really advanced.
Oh, it came out of COVID. We were a client choice. It's called food pantry model before, that looked like a grocery store. However, due to our space, it was really limited. We could only take 2 or 3 max shoppers at a time, and people would sometimes have to wait an hour, 2 hours to shop. And then COVID came, and we couldn't have anybody in the building, obviously. So we started packing bags of food, but that was back to the old model of everybody gets the same bag of food, regardless of whether you like peanut butter and green beans or not. And so it's a very inefficient method, because some were even driving around and opening their trunks and taking out the food they don't like and donating it back to us, or they take it home and it gets thrown away or given. So, and there's also not much dignity in that, right? It might not be culturally what you like. You might have health conditions that you need to be, shop carefully for. So client choice is really the gold standard for food pantries. That being said, in COVID, we were dying to get back to that model that allowed people to pick what they wanted. And there is a software out there called Smart Choice, and it does look like a Instacart. It's a real-time inventory of what's on our warehouse shelves, and you can go on a point system, select the foods that you want.
What does that mean, or what does that look like on the, I guess, logistics side for your team? Are you guys scanning things in? How do you keep track of the inventory so that your clients can shop with ease?
It all takes place either in our warehouse or on site. We keep our fresh produce and frozen meats and stuff on each distribution location, one in Forsyth and one in Dawson, but all of our non-perishables reside in a warehouse space that we rent off of Martin Road. So that it's they do have the capability to scan, but it's much easier to just say, I just received 4 cans of green beans. And so it's a logging system of volunteers, literally many, many volunteers going through food donations and entering them into our system, putting them on shelves that look like a grocery store. And then another set of volunteers, they get a little receipt of what somebody has ordered, and they push shopping carts around and they pack a bag and get it ready to go.
Sounds just like what I see at Kroger.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple things. One, I do want to be sure that I share your locations correctly. So you mentioned Dawson as well.
Yes.
So you have a physical location in Dawson?
We do. Back in 2022, we merged with an organization in Dawson called RICRAC, the Resource Center Action Council, I believe it was. So they are now the place, and it is up off Highway 9, close to downtown Dawsonville. And it has a thrift store. It's a beautiful old church with quaint rooms and creaky floors and just a totally different atmosphere than our Forsyth location. And then there's a food pantry out of there as well.
Sounds like a historic building.
It is.
I love historic.
Yes.
All right. So I believe I mentioned only coming before. So those of you listening who'd like to learn more, there are physical locations in Dawson and Cumming. And also those are pantry locations as well.
Exactly. If I can add one more thing, one area of that food business that is really growing is our mobile pantry, because as residents of Forsyth and Dawson, you know that transportation, we don't have public transportation options. And so transportation can be a real barrier to receiving services and getting food. So our mobile pantry is really growing, and in cooperation with the local school systems, we are working towards, we have 3 Saturdays a month where we go out and deliver food in elementary school parking lots. And we partner with our other nonprofits in the area, the Forsyth Community Clinic, Family Promises bringing its benefits bus. And so it's a central resource that might be closer to where somebody lives to get the services that they need.
That's wonderful. I like how you're really taking action and consideration to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
Talk about some of the other programs or some of the other benefits to somebody who might be in need that found the place.
I think the biggest thing we have to offer, well, actually, I want to say a couple of things. One is we're a resource hub. Because of the number of services that we have available, we can meet the majority of a person's need. That being said, if we can't, we will readily refer you to somebody who can. We're not just going to turn you away and say, figure it out. But the second is we consciously work every day to make our environment welcoming, open compassion to everyone. Everyone is in crisis sometimes. And when you're in crisis, you can't think straight, your mind's spinning, and you need somebody in that calm, soothing voice to kind of hold your hand a little bit. We're going to take care of the immediate need. And once we've got that met, then let's talk about maybe how we can meet some longer term needs for you.
You kind of hit the nail on the head. I took a breath when you said that. I don't know if you saw, but it sounds like you are kind of an anchor for those who are coming in. And like you said, in crisis, it's just a whirlwind. I think that everybody listening can empathize with the feeling of a little bit of crisis. I love what you said, welcoming, opening, and compassionate. That sounds like those might be 3 pillars of your culture.
It is part of our values. Exactly.
Your values.
And our culture. We thrive on that. That client first. What is in the best interest of our client?
Cristy, I have known you for a handful of years now.
Yeah.
How time flies. Yeah. Tell me how you got into the world of service.
That's an interesting story, actually. I grew up in Roswell. I went to school at Georgia Tech. I went straight into the consulting field. I was going to be in IT. I had co-opted with IBM in school. I went to work for IBM for a couple of years. And then, as many women have it, I got pregnant and started a family. My husband at the time was traveling all the time for work, so I decided to stay home, not to make this too long. But we had the opportunity when my kids were young to live outside the country. So we spent a couple years in Toronto, which is very similar but also different. Living in another country, I will just tell you, is very different than visiting or travel as a tourist to another country. But Canada was great, beautiful, beautiful country. But I don't have a work permit anywhere, so I started volunteering at a soup kitchen there. And then my husband had the opportunity for a job in Mexico City, Mexico. So we moved there for another 2.5 years. And again, I couldn't work.
Do you speak Spanish?
I speak some Spanish, yes.
Very cool.
Yes. It was great training for sure. But I saw a level of poverty there that I had never seen anywhere. So I just got busy in doing what I could do. I found a wonderful church there and women's group and grounded me, and we volunteered and we served. And when it was time to come home, even before we moved home, I just started scouring the internet for nonprofits in my area. And I found a few, and I volunteered at a few. I went through a couple, even got on staff at one, ran into a friend who said, "You need to come volunteer at the place." And I said, "Okay, sure, I'll go try it out." And when I went to the place, I personally felt at home. I thought, this is the place for me. No pun intended. But I felt comfortable. It was the right size. It was in keeping with my beliefs, and I felt welcome. And after about 2 years volunteering, a staff person had to be out for a personal emergency. And that time, Joni Smith was the executive director, and she asked if I would step in. And I did. And when the person returned, she said, "Would you mind staying?" And I did. And never saw myself ending up here. And I absolutely love it. So I've been with the organization now, including my volunteer time. It'll be 9 years.
9 years. Yeah. Wow. And yes, your volunteer time does count. That was when they were secretly recruiting you. You mentioned something that is so profound. To me, it kind of sounded like you received the call when you walked in the door, and you mentioned that you felt so at home and you just knew that the place was the place for you. Mm-hmm. Can you describe that calling or that feeling of peace or knowing in your heart? Because it sounds like it is of the Spirit to me.
Yeah.
And navigating that call is something that's new to me. So I'd love to just know personally how you knew that was it.
I guess I will say with the other nonprofits that I volunteered with, I had this mindset of I should do this. I should do this. This is the right thing to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it was more of a mental convince yourself that they're all good services, don't get me wrong, but it took some mental energy to pump myself up to do some of it. It just wasn't a natural thing for me. And maybe it was the areas of their service. But when I got to the place, it was something about the people, but it's such a good question. Maybe just a sense of peace, and the work was natural. Like it came natural to my thought process, came natural to my heart, came natural to love on the people that walked in the door. It was easy, I guess, is the best way to say it.
You mentioned dignity, and that's so important in the worlds that we work in. And it sounds like the experience at the place is very modern. It's very modern, and it sounds like a wonderful experience. You yourself just touched on the people that come through the door that you interact with. How important is anonymity, and how does dignity play a role in the work that you every day with the organization?
I think everybody wants to feel seen and heard. And you can tell when they walk on the door if they felt that or not in their life. And they can be surprised when you sit down and talk to them, use their name, take the time to listen to their story, right? They've been overlooked by many, or, traumatic past. You never, ever know what somebody's past has been and what their story is. And it's the training and the temperament to be able to give that time and understanding to what they're going through. But as an organization, we really focus on, we do a lot of trainings in all different areas, but we recently did one on compassion fatigue, because it is real. Hearing these difficult stories every day can drain you totally. And you do need to be filled up. So you need to be reminded to take care of yourself. And it might be on a particularly difficult day in the office that we have to go out and say to a staff member, you know what, you go use my office, go sit and have your lunch, have some quiet time away, or, work from home tomorrow. Just take a break. You need some mental time to recover and take care of yourself.
Talk about a success story, because you're almost with them for 10 years now. Tell me something that you just remember so fondly, somebody that you impacted, an instance or an event where you saw measurable change.
I'll share the story of a young woman who came to us in high school and participated in our Orange Duffel Bag Initiative program. And it's a 12-week kind of life skills building program that we work closely with the high schools to identify students who maybe are at risk of not graduating, don't have support at home, things like that. It's a 12-week program where we help them lay out a plan A and a plan B for their future and open their eyes to maybe some opportunities that they never thought that they might have. So she participated in that program. We follow that up with a 6-week summer internship program on site at our Forsyth location. So they work with us for 20 hours. We pour into them with more lunch and learns and exploring, have them do a service project to give back. But one of these young women went through that program and then also came to our program, The Cottage. So we have a residential program for young women between 18 and 24 years old who are experiencing housing instability. So they live in this house. We can hold up to 6 young women. So she came to us out of high school, and you have to have a path, a drive. It's that success. It's a pathway to self-sustainability. You have to be either trying to finish high school, pursuing a career, some technical skills, pursuing college, other things. So this young woman was living in the cottage, and we also have an adult training program in our office. So it's 6 months, fully paid and full-time jobs. It was at our front desk and our food warehouse or in our retail. And it's for people who need to build a skill set, and whether it's a hard skill like forklift driving, or to enable them to get a better paying job. Or it could be a soft skill, everything from showing up to work on time, how to handle conflict with your boss, professionalism, that type of thing. So we wrap around them. So she took on our front desk receptionist 6-month position. And then she applied to college, and she was working 2 jobs, and she is going to make it. And when I asked her one time, I said, what is it that drives you? And because I was astounded with, she would work all night and then come work all day with us. What drives you to do this? And she said, to prove my mother wrong.
Boy, did she ever.
Exactly. Exactly. And she is going to make it. There's another GED student who obviously didn't have our high school diploma. It was always her dream to work for the sheriff's office, but they require a high school diploma. So she went through our GED program, passed all of the exams, and has a job at the sheriff's office.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure seeing them thrive in the community is such a reward.
I've run into people who come, we have people that have come back and say, here, I want to donate back. You helped my family when we needed it the most.
Oh, that's so touching.
Yeah.
And that's really the full circle of service, pay it forward and stewardship as a whole.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's beautiful. And it is what keeps you going.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you the same question, just out of curiosity. What drives you, Cristy?
I think it's that heart of service. It is so fulfilling to pour into somebody. I was recently asked my favorite memory, and it really goes back to when I was a volunteer, when the food pantry was on site and people would come in to check in, is I loved knowing everybody's name. And when you greeted them by their name and asked how their husband was doing who just had surgery, and their faces light up. There was this one gentleman who would walk in, and he had the most beautiful smile. Absolutely loved it. And he would come in, and I'd go, there's Mr. Laws, the best smile in the whole entire world. And he would just light up.
And show the smile.
Exactly, and show the smile. And it was just so fun and to get hugs and thanks. But I'm not doing it for the hugs and thanks. It's the natural, it's the seeing you have within you the capability to help someone else light up.
One thing that kind of stands out to me in that example is the hospitality. So the hospitality that you show, and also you mentioned dignity and all those things, just the human factor, treating everybody like an ordinary person and making it a personalized experience.
Yeah.
It sounds like you are good at doing.
I think there's a whole lot of education that needs to happen around, not to take it down, but homelessness, people who use our services, mental illness. When you say those words, a lot of people come up with one image in their mind, or somebody who's dirty and nasty and carrying around all their belongings in a bag is the look of homelessness.
Right.
And what they don't realize is that that's one very small form of what it looks like to be homeless. There's so many other, you don't know who's sitting next to you and what their circumstances are. And so it's educating that and knowing that, it could be anybody. It really could be.
Talking about the education piece, what do you guys do to help educate the community or the public to kind of be on the lookout or, support the effort as we just outlined?
We work with whatever advocacy groups there are and collaboratives there are in the community. That's where we truly come together as nonprofits in working on this cause, whether that's the Homeless Youth Council with the school system, or I just drew a blank of the other one. But thinking about the cold weather we had in January, banding together and supporting who has a shelter, who doesn't, how do we
Warming
stations, communicating that out. So really social media, it's trying to raise awareness that it exists here in our communities.
So for those listening, how can they find you guys so they can take advantage of some resources should they qualify, or maybe some of the other?
Well, the best way to learn about all of our services is probably our website. So that is theplacega.org.
And anything else that you might like to leave our listeners with that you think might be important or of value?
If I can tell you about a couple upcoming events, that would be great. We are so excited and honored to be celebrating our 50th year in this community. The 4 Dominican nuns founded the Sisters Place back in 1975. So we are celebrating that this year. And I recently heard from a quote from one of the sisters who said, the place will survive if the community embraces it. And I think these 50 years are evidence that the community here embraced it. And you can imagine Forsyth County looked dramatically different 50 years ago than it does today. And our poverty rate has remained steady over the last 20 years or so, but declined from where it was 50 years ago. But that being said, I guess I want people to know the population is exploding here. Yeah. So while our poverty rates kind of stayed the same and maybe dipped or gone back up, the number, on an absolute term, number of people that are in poverty in our community is growing. It will be double.
Right, because with the increase in population comes the increase.
Yeah, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it in our food pantry. We used to serve, 200 families a week pre-COVID, and we're serving almost 500. It's going up about 10% a month.
I'm sure you're kind of filling that gap too, just, with low income families or people who they're able to pay their mortgage or their rent, but that leaves no room for anything else.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So we have our gala. We're going to celebrate our past and our present and where we plan to go over the next 50 years.
Cristy, I have enjoyed our time together. Thank you for sharing your passion and expertise with our listeners.
Well, thank you for inviting me to come back. It's exciting to be here, and having now been in my role longer, I have the ability and the freedom to be able to come out and share my passion and love for what we do and help. And we are always excited to have you walk alongside us in this journey of helping our local community. And that could be your time, treasures, and talents.
Oh, you stole my line.
Sorry.
That's okay. So for those of you out there who want to get involved, visit theplacega.org. And don't forget that they have their 50th anniversary upcoming. All right. For those of you who enjoy or find value in this series, please leave us 5 stars because that helps other people find us. For my guest today, Cristy Ferencie, I am your host, Amanda Pierce, and this is Nonprofit Nation. Visit amandapierce.com to learn more about purpose-driven podcasting. Special thanks to our partners at Commercial Capital Limited for supporting the Nonprofit Nation podcast series. Commercial Capital Limited is your one-stop shop for commercial financing needs. Visit commercialcapitalltd.com to learn more about the types of programs and loans that they fund, types of properties they finance, and the documents needed to underwrite and process a loan in under 48 hours. Contact the experts at 770-908-1672 or email the team info@commercialcapitalltd.com.